Hey guys, welcome back to Math 100. This is the first time we're doing something new since we started going online, so I just thought I'd give you a quick greeting face to face. Well, sort of. You can see my face. I can't see your face. So hello, welcome back. And from now on, I'm just gonna, for this first lesson at least, I'm gonna just show you my screen. So I'm gonna cut my face out and let's move on to just looking at the screen. We're looking at section 11.1. We're starting a section about finance, and this section we're gonna just cover about five sections. I'm sorry, I've been saying section, I meant chapter. Chapter 11, we're going to do about 5 sections of chapter 11 on finance. And the last section is actually just a review. So really only 4 new sections. And then the last one is just putting it all together. After that, your last test is going to be on this stuff, the finance stuff. I'll explain more about the plan moving forward. But for now, let's just get started with the very first lesson. This is 11.1. 11.1 is just introducing you to some of the main formulas, in particular for interest, like compound interest and simple interest, when we're talking about finance. Now, I know it's kind of like, things that you don't necessarily want to think about, maybe depending on your personality, but, it's things that you'll probably have to encounter in life, and you're gonna have to deal with interest, either paying your credit card interest or whatever it is, or if you buy something that's expensive, like a car or something, and you have interest for sure. It's also can work in your favor though. If you have, like, let's say you're planning for your retirement or something, if you put money into an account that bears interest, then it's going to work in your advantage, right? To your advantage. Okay, anyways, but before we get started, let's talk about just a couple of quick practice things. I know this is kind of like from elementary school, but we have to make sure that we have this down because we're going to be using this sort of conversion back and forth from percentage to decimals all the time. So let's just do a quick practice, quick review. And I'm going to type it up on the side over here. This is kind of like my notepad where I can type math language. If you're interested, this is the program Lyx, Lyx. Okay, so the first one, what is 45% as a decimal? 45% as a decimal, what is that? That's, what we do is when you have a decimal, a percentage I mean, to change to a decimal, we just move the decimal place twice over, right? So this will be 1, 2. If it's invisible, then I just add it in. So that's equal to 0.0, I'm sorry, 0.45. 1, 2 places, yeah? There it is. Okay, second one. What is 4.5% as a decimal? This is kind of usually about the values that we're always converting, like a single digit percentages with a decimal. So 4.5%, what is that equal to? Again, I'm going to move the decimal place twice over, but after I move it once, there's nowhere to go, so I need to add an extra 0 in there. Yeah, let's start with what we originally had. This is the original percentage, right? And I move the decimal once, twice, so I'm going to end up with 0.045 or 0.045. That's the decimal version. Okay, this other time we're moving in the opposite direction. So if I start with 0.002, what is that as a percent this time? Well, this time I'm moving, if I'm going to percent, I'm moving in the opposite direction. So 1, 2, that's going to be 0.2%. Yeah, 1, 2 places. Okay, that's it. That's just a quick review. All right, so what is this lesson really about? Today's lesson is about just some of the basic financial formulas, and in particular those that revolve around interest. But before we get started with the formulas, there's just the different letters that I need to define for you, the different variables. So first of all, I. Not surprisingly, I stands for interest. I for interest, right? And interest in dollars. Okay, P. P is the present value. Present value means this number that you start with. So if you're buying something, the number will be the cost, like the actual cost. Or when I say actual cost, I mean like the list cost before any interest is added on. If it's working in your advantage, you're lending money, then it would be the amount of money that you lend. We call it also the principal, but either way, P for present value or P for principal, it works either way. Okay, R is the rate. When we say rate, we mean the percentage expressed as a decimal. So whenever you plug in this rate into your formulas, you always want to convert first to a decimal. All right, T is time in years. Make sure you're in years. And N is the number of times compounding in a single year. Okay, so number of times compounding in 1 year, not to be confused with the number of times compounded overall, because if you have multiple years, then the number of compounds is going to be n times t. All right, a is the future value. That is just the principal or the present value plus the interest added on. Now, if you're talking about compounding, then that's going to be continuously changing, right? You're going to have the original present value. The future value is the end result after the time period is over, with all the compounding interest included. Okay, now one note, you'll also see this other letter E inside a formula sometimes, but this E is not a variable like these guys. These guys can be things that change, right? Variable means I could plug in different numbers, and the other ones are they're gonna vary depending on that. But E is not like that. E is actually just a number similar to the way pi is a number. You know how pi is roughly 2.14, but it goes on past that, right? E is similar. It's roughly 2.7183, but the digits go off. They go on and on forever, kind of like pi. All right, so those are what the letters represent. Let's talk about the first four formulas. And by the way, guys, I forgot to mention this, but I'm going to take a quick pause. If you don't know where to find these lessons, I did email them to you, but you can also find them under our resources page on Lalima. So click on resources. If you go to lesson notes, it's right there. The old notes I put into a folder for chapter 3 and 14. So just click on that and then it'll open up this. Okay, so the formulas. First formula, super easy. It's just the interest formula. All it is the interest is equal to the principal, how much you're borrowing or how much you're lending, times the rate times the time. Right? That makes sense, right? Just multiply the value times the rate. Remember, rate is as a decimal though, and times time is in years. And there's no compounding to worry about here, so you just multiply straight. All right, the future value. Future value is sort of a follow-up to this simple interest formula. All it is A. A stands for, remember, future value, how much you end up paying in total or how much you earn in total. It's P times 1 plus RT. Let me just pause for a second and show you where this comes from. So I'm going to put this, A is equal to P times 1 plus RT right in this corner up here. And I'm going to do just a tiny bit of algebra. Don't be intimidated by me saying that. Don't worry, it's not bad. Okay, A is equal to P times RT, 1 plus RT, right? Just want to show you that this is an intuitive way to interpret this. Intuitive formula. A is equal to P times 1 plus RT, but if I distribute this P, then I got P times 1, right? And then, which is P, and P times RT, which is plus PRT, right? But what was PRT? Think back to the previous equation. Here, let me move it so I can see both of those at the same time. Here, I is equal to PRT, that's the interest, right? So this is P plus I. Basically, the end result, if we're talking about simple interest, is just the principal that you borrowed or you're lending, plus the interest. That's it. So pretty obvious formula, actually. Now you can use this form if you want to, P plus I, or you can use this, just plug it straight into this P times 1 plus RT. Either way, it's going to work. Okay, that's for simple interest. Let's move on to talking about compound interest now. Right, so the compound interest formula, what it does is it takes into account the fact that you're compounding. So when you compound interest, and the end result is going to be a much larger value. And that works to your favor if you're lending money, but of course it works against you, like if you're paying your credit card bill and you don't pay it right away and you let the interest compound. Their interest rates are like super crazy, by the way. It's gonna I'll show you the graph in a minute how it's gonna skyrocket. Okay, so anyways, this is the future value. If you're talking about compound interest, it's P times 1 plus R over N raised to the NT power. Remember, this R is rate as a decimal. This N is the number of compounds per year, and T is the number of years. Now, the more we compound, obviously, the more money you're going to end up with, right? Or either paying or receiving. But there's sort of a limit to that. So the larger this N gets, the more money in general you get. However, it's capped. It's interestingly capped because this N dividing by N and raising to the N, they sort of, in a way, cancel each other out. Not cancel each other out, but they sort of counteract each other so that the end result turns out to being this value E. This is kind of an amazing magical fact in mathematics that as this value N goes towards infinity, the whole thing overall turns into E. Okay, I'm not going to go into too much detail about why that is or where it comes from because it's not really important for us. But what we should know is that if I compound continuously, then the formula turns into, there's no n's involved anymore. It approximates to e. And so what is this? This is a is equal to p times this value e. By the way, e you can find on your calculator, and I'll show you where to find it in a minute when we start doing these questions. And then raised to the r is rate as a decimal times t. Okay, so I'm going to pause this video right now. What I want to do in my next video is just show you sort of what these interest rates are going to look like, or what these three values are going to, the graphs of these three are going to look like in comparison with each other. So let's just pause for now.